Now, the spot healing brush is a really great tool, but it's not going to work for you all the time. And when it falls short, when you can't get the results you're looking for, then you'll want to switch to the standard healing brush, which allows you to specify a source for your modifications. So, for example, let's say that I want to paint away this little mark on her chin. Well, I'd start by switching the mode back to normal, and then I'll go ahead and paint along that edge like so. And notice that I end up sampling something that I don't want. And it's my experience that no matter how many times I try this, that's the result I get. So I'll just go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change. And I will switch from the spot healing brush tool to the healing brush tool. And because you get to it from the same flyout menu, you can also switch from the spot healing brush to the standard healing brush by pressing Shift J. All right, now what I need to do is press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click at the point that I want to source. That is the area that I want to clone with the tool. And then I'll go ahead and paint, but notice that nothing happens. And that's because sample is set to current layer. I want to be able to reference the entire composition. So I'm going to change that setting to all layers like so. Again, that allows me to work non-destructively on an independent layer inside the image. And now I'll just paint over that little mark like so, and then I'll go ahead and release. And then I'll paint over this guy as well. Now, the thing that you have to watch with the standard healing brush, see that little area there? I'll move my cursor away. Notice how you're going to get a little bit more flare when you're using this tool than when you're working with the spot healing brush. And that's because the spot healing brush takes advantage of that content-aware technology where the standard healing brush does not. So in other words, just go ahead and switch back to the spot healing brush and try to paint over that area again. All right, now I want to paint away this little detail here, and I'm going to have the best results once again if I use the healing brush tool, but I'm going to need to change my source point. I can't just paint over this region by cloning from underneath her chin because notice we're going to get a ton of luminance flaring off that hair. So I'll go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change, and I will Alt click or Option click up here in this portion of the hair. So notice that I'm Alt or Option clicking directly on the hair. And now I'll move my cursor down. And as you can see, we have a preview of what we're about to clone inside of the brush. At which point I'll just go ahead and paint down like so in order to extend that hair. That doesn't really take care of this region though. And so what I'm going to need to do to resolve it is switch back to the spot healing brush tool, because otherwise I'm going to get some flaring off the nearby hairs. And I'll just go ahead and paint down like so. Sometimes, though, you may end up with a bit of a harsh edge when you're painting with the spot healing brush, in which case, just go ahead and try again. All right, now I'm going to switch back to my standard healing brush tool. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to paint away one hair that goes through two others. So what I'm going to need to do is Alt-click or Option-click right above that hair on the intersecting hair. See that? And then I'll move my cursor down, make sure I have the hair centered inside that cursor, and then just start painting and then shift click over to the nose, and I'll see how well that works. That's not quite the edge I'm looking for, so I'll go ahead and switch back to the spot healing brush tool, and I'll click and shift click like so. All right, now I need to switch back to the healing brush, the standard healing brush tool, and I'll Alt click or Option click right there. And then I'll click and shift click like so in order to paint a straight line. And then if after that point, you just want to continue brushing, that is to say, without pressing the shift key, don't just start in painting, because notice I started at the hair right there. So I just painted in a little bit of hair at that location. So I'll go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change. If you want to align things properly, then click at your alignment point right there, just to give Photoshop a sense for where you want to start, and then go up to the options bar and turn on the aligned checkbox. And then notice you'll just continue painting aligned with that first click location. Now that is going to replicate a detail that we don't want. So I would now suggest you turn off the align checkbox, resample a point inside your image by Alt or Option clicking. And generally you want to source a location that's pretty close to where you're painting, and then go ahead and click in order to zap that detail away. And now I'd like to paint in this nostril a little bit, so I'm going to paint along it like so. That kind of makes a mess of things. So I'll press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac. That looks to me like a perfect opportunity to take advantage of content-aware cloning. So I'll go ahead and switch back to the spot healing brush, and I'll increase the size of my cursor a little bit and paint along the edge of that nostril. And I'm trying to do so carefully, so I'm creating a nice curve, and that ends up working out pretty nicely. All right, now there might be a few other details I see as long as I'm zoomed this far in. For example, I'm going to paint this little detail away. Oh, and notice right here that we have some more hair. So I'll just go ahead and click and shift click down to the lip like so, and maybe click a few times in these larger pores in order to get rid of them. All right, so we still have some details that I'd like to remedy. For example, notice that we have this dark spot in the lip. The problem with that is there's no place along here that's going to match. We want to find an edge so that we can paint that edge properly. And so the solution in this case is to paint with the standard healing brush tool so that we can specify a source point. But I want to be able to flip that source point from the opposite side of the lip. And I'll show you how that works in the very next movie.